that better, better, better. Better life, better production, it's better right. We need a world with a healthy diet for all. And no more food loss and less waste. When we keep done search, you'll find a life. If we can put ourselves to the side.
Oh, there's a brand new generation. Oh, for a brand new healthy world. Yeah, yeah, for a healthy world.
Our world has changed. New life and hope and promise to sustain. But what always remains is young people leading ways. Quiet to no shanda. Together, yeah. Together, yeah. In she's working to remove
In our fields of hope, we plant the seeds with hands that want to grow, to feed each other, sow the dreams that know. Planting seeds feed mouths across the globe. يلا 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 حبيبي يلا نغني سوا ونحقق أحلامنا سوا يلا دي حياتنا ونقدر يلا 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 حبيبي يلا أحلامي ما تكمل إلا بأحلامك أنت كمان يلا 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 حبيبي يلا 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 نغني سوا يلا 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 We're strong as one.
I need that better, 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 better life, better production, it's better right. I need that better, 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 better life, better production, it's better right. We need a world with a healthy diet for all. And no more food loss and less waste. When we keep done search, you'll find a life. If we can put ourselves to the side.
Oh, there's a brand new generation. Oh, for a brand new healthy world. Yeah, yeah, for a healthy world.
Our world has changed. New life and hope and promise to sustain. But what always remains is young people leading ways. Quiet to no shanda. Together, yeah. Together, yeah. In she's working to remove
In our fields of hope, we plant the seeds with hands that want to grow,
search, you'll find red light. If we can put ourselves to the side.
Oh, there's a brand new generation. Oh, for a brand new healthy world. Yeah, yeah, for a healthy world.
Our world has changed. New life and hope and promise to sustain. But what always remains is young people leading ways. Quiet together.
Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Amazing. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone from wherever you are tuning in across the globe. And a warm welcome to our online and in person audience here at the headquarters of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Welcome to the 2025 World Food Forum Private Sector Session, the private sector's role in scaling youth led innovation. I'm Oscar Lopez from the United States of America, and it is my honor to be your host for this very special event today. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll explore what's driving success, what challenges remain, and how we can work together with industry leaders to empower young changemakers across the globe, enabling impactful and sustainable transformation of our agri-food systems. Here's how the session will unfold. We'll begin with opening remarks from Ms. Grace Wachori, Africa Regional Director for Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. We will then welcome the Deputy Director General of FAO, Beth Bechtel, alongside 4 industry experts and youth-led innovators in a panel discussion under the theme Innovating Together, Private Sector Partnerships and Youth-led Startups Transforming Agri-Food Systems, followed by a Q&A session with our live audience, and finally, a keynote speech from the CEO of Bridge for Billions. So, without further delay, it's my honor to join and welcome Ms. Grace Wachori to give the opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me, distinguished guests, colleagues, and young innovators. Now, across Africa, an estimated 48 million children are born each year. Of this, roughly 80% enroll in primary school, but only about 32% progress to secondary school or tertiary studies. Ultimately, only about 40% of this secure employment. These figures coming from the UN, UNESCO, and World Bank paint a very vivid picture of the steep attrition along Africa's education to employment pathway. Excuse me. These numbers tell us one thing clearly. While education builds the foundation, entrepreneurship creates the opportunity. Entrepreneurship offers a critical bridge for millions of young Africans who may never find formal employment, but have the ingenuity to build solutions for their communities. And when paired with technology, it becomes a catalyst for transformation, helping Africa's youth leapfrog traditional barriers to sustainable development. Digital tools are linking farmers to markets, connecting innovators to finance, and turning local ideas into scalable solutions. Patient financing for entrepreneurs is scarce, and especially now, where the world is with international development continues to reduce according to the geopolitical macroeconomic shifts that we have seen, and therefore affecting capital flows. In Africa alone, again, 40% of SME loans applied are denied due to lack of expertise, business strategy. This could be business modeling or collateral issues, or even just lack of awareness, the knowledge of what this looks like. In search of catalytic capital, development aid, when structured strategically, can go beyond philanthropy. It can serve as a lever for economic development, providing the risk-tolerant capital, mentorship, and partnerships that allow small and growing businesses to flourish. By aligning philanthropy with private sector investment, we can unlock new markets, generate jobs, and create pathways for inclusive growth across communities. It is therefore a true honor for me to join you all here in this session to spotlight how private sector can accelerate youth-led agri-food innovations and skill solutions for inclusive and sustainable food systems. As Regional Director for Africa, the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, ANDI, a program of the Aspen Institute, I have the privilege of working with a global network of over 300 organizations, including investors, accelerators, development agencies, and corporations that collaborate to strengthen the ecosystem supporting small and growing businesses in emerging markets. Our mission is to ensure that these small and growing businesses, these are the missing middle between micro enterprises and large corporations, and the engines of inclusive growth, to access capital, talent, and knowledge they need to thrive. In Africa, a lot of our work is around green and inclusive growth, gender lens impacting, climate entrepreneurship, health, and women economic empowerment, which are all at the intersection of agriculture, food systems, and youth development. We have seen that when private sector engages deeply in ecosystem building, the results are transformative. Andy works with corporate collaborations to strengthen supply chains, promote sustainable practices, and empower local entrepreneurs, thereby contributing to economic growth and community resilience in the region. Andy, in partnership with these organizations, emphasizes the integration of small and medium-sized enterprises into corporate supply chains. This approach not only diversifies supply sources, but also enhances resilience and efficiency in procurement processes. For instance, in Latin America, Anglo-American's Inclusive Procurement Program has successfully integrated over 300 host communities, host suppliers across various procurement categories, demonstrating the value of local sourcing. While with Walmart Foundation, we have been able to invest, while Walmart Foundation that we have worked as a partner has invested over $86 million in grants to support smallholder farmers and entrepreneurs in emerging markets, aiming to improve their skills, market access, and resilience. The collaboration also focuses on adopting sustainable procurement practices that benefit both businesses and communities. Andy works to also empower those entrepreneurs by providing them with access to corporate supply chains, thereby creating economic opportunities and fostering community development. Specifically in South Africa, Andy, in partnership with the African Management Institute and the last outfit that had left the USAID, ran an Emerge program focused on women-led small and growing businesses. And the goal here was to build investment readiness, helping these women entrepreneurs understand financial metrics, sharpen their business cases, connect to potential investors who would then tap into procurement supply chains. A powerful example that I see within our membership is the Partners in Food Solutions, PFS, a model of cross-sector collaboration linking multinational food companies such as General Mills, Cargill, and DSM Finmatch with African food processors and agribusinesses. PFS provides technical expertise, mentorship, and business support to local entrepreneurs, helping them enhance food safety, improve production, and access new markets. This approach has strengthened hundreds of small and medium enterprises, improving nutrition, creating jobs, and providing that corporate expertise, when shared inclusively, can drive sustainable development. We also have another company in Kenya called the Mr. Green Africa that is redefining the circular economy by turning waste into value. Through partnerships with global consumer goods companies and local communities, Mr. Green Africa has created dignified jobs for youth while advancing responsible supply chains and environmental stewardship. It illustrates how private sector collaboration can move us from sustainability talk to sustainability practice. Today's dialogue brings us together, thought leaders, who embody this spirit of partnership. And I therefore invite us to reflect on three imperatives. One, collaboration is a currency. Sustainable agri-food systems will depend on partnerships that blend resources, expertise, and technology. Secondly, equity as foundation. We must define and design partnerships that center youth, women, and local communities as co-creators of change end to end. Thirdly, action must be an outcome. Let today's discussion inspire not only dialogue and tangible commitments, but tangible commitments to invest in, mentor, and scale youth-led innovation. And in the words of one of the young entrepreneurs that Andy supports, we do not need saviors. No, we need partners who believe we can solve this together. So may this session strengthen those partnerships across private sector, philanthropy, and youth movements, and chart a path toward agri-food systems are inclusive, regenerative, and resilient. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much for such an inspiring overview and for setting the scene for our session to chair our discussion today and guide us through the different experiences of our panelists. Now, to help us continue on this session, I'm pleased and honored to welcome the FAO Deputy Director General, Beth Bechtel, to the stage.
All right. Hi, thank you, everybody. It's nice to see some of you who are still here from our earlier session. It's really a great privilege to be here with you. I think I'll go ahead and sit because I'm going to be inviting my guests to come up and sit as well. But to be able to have this conversation about some very important topics that relate to how we collectively engage with the private sector. And I think as we just saw in the previous session, there's a lot of talent, a lot of creativity, and a lot of energy that young entrepreneurs especially are bringing to the big challenges of the day. If we had more time, we could probably dive into the specificity of each of those challenges that are being prioritized by many people, and I think there are many interesting solutions that are coming together. But I think for this discussion, what we really want to hear is about the connecting of dots, the connecting of the young startups, the entrepreneurs with private sector partners who can ultimately help them be successful. Because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need these early stage ideas to come to a finality, to come to a place where they really can, I think, deliver. And so today's discussion, Innovating Together, Private Sector Partnerships and Youth-Led Startups, Transforming Agri-Food Systems. It's a long title, but it does capture the spirit, I think, quite perfectly. And so what I would like to do is actually invite a number of leading experts and very interesting individuals who are working in this space to join me here on the stage. I'll go ahead and introduce them, but then as we have this conversation, I'm going to let each of them actually introduce themselves and a little bit about their organizations and some of their thoughts. So in this particular order, let me start by asking Ian Roberts, CTO of Bueller and president of Mass Challenge Switzerland. Ian, please join me here on the stage as well. You heard from him in the last session, and we're very pleased that you're able to join us for this discussion. Next, I'd like to ask Emily Norford, nominations manager of the Food Planet Prize and the Kurt Bergforce Foundation, to join us here. Next is Kunihiro Shimoji, founder and CEO of EF Polymer in Japan. And finally, last but not least, Ms. Miral Kabir, co-founder and CEO of Safi. Please give all of them a round of applause for being with us. Do we have some additional microphones so that every member has? If not, we can share, but before we get started, I'll ask to make sure that we have something for each of you. I think it might make things a little bit easier. Great. So welcome to each of you. Thank you for being here. We can share one. I'll let you have mine. It's really, again, a great pleasure to have you be a part of this discussion. My first question is really, as I mentioned, a bit of a foundational question. It lets the people who are here with us in the room and online get to know you a little bit, the organizations that you represent. So I'll let you share a little bit about yourself and your organization, but maybe also share maybe one experience or an example of how the work that you do is really focused on youth-led innovation, and hopefully with a focus on how we impact food and agricultural challenges and issues of the day. So a self-introduction and something very tangible, very concrete about how you are prioritizing youth-led solutions and this focus on agri-food systems today. And Ian, I will turn to you to start.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, my day job, I'm the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Bühler. It's a 165-year-old company based in Switzerland, and we provide processing technology for the food industry. We estimate that 2 billion people every single day eat products that come off technology from us. So I think this is something that's fairly staggering, and it comes with a huge responsibility to enhance nutrition, affordability of food, availability of food, etc. But the reason I'm sat here is different. That's my day job. I have the passion job, which is Mass Challenge, a Mass Challenge Switzerland, and this is 100% devoted to supporting entrepreneurs. You know, many people say to us, how do you get these brilliant corporate partners? And I say, because we give the best possible experience to startups. And if we enable startups to be successful, we will get better startups. And when we get better startups, we get better corporate partners and we get higher engagement. And it's a very virtuous kind of circle. I was going to give an example of one of the startups that went through that program that also we helped as Bühler technologically. And it's, you know, a few years ago, we had this massive boom and hype around plant-based meat. Now, I can tell you, plant-based protein consumption continues to rise. This is a very, very good thing, and it's very positive. But plant-based meats were overhyped and not much fun to eat. And so this caused consumers to have to compromise on pleasure. There was one company, a little company that got spun out of ETH, the Technical University in Zurich, called Planted, that made a fantastic product. Now, this story gets a bit overlapped. As Bühler, we put technology into the ETH so the students could learn how to scale and use technology. So they developed their prototypes on our lines. When they got big enough, they applied to Mass Challenge, and they won the first prize from Mass Challenge, which gave them enough money to found their company. Now, they build their factories with Bühler technology. And so we have this super cycle of they are successful, we as Bühler are more successful. Mass Challenge made a contribution in preparing some technically super brilliant young people to be business savvy. We have a list of VCs. Well, we have two lists. We have one list they're allowed to talk to and one list that they're not allowed to talk to because they're too carnivorous. And they wrap them up in deals that don't help startups to maintain their equity and build their companies. So I think this, perhaps as a way of introduction, that's a little bit how we look at helping startups. Our corporate partners benefit. The startups must scale, and the startups are the total focus of the program, because if you make them much better, the best ones will come to you.
Great, thanks very much. It's, I'm sure, very insightful for a number of our startups who are here in the room and some who are even on stage to hear some of that. Let me turn to Emily next for, again, self-introduction, a little bit of how you see your role at the prize and the foundation supporting young entrepreneurs. Please.
Thank you, Beth. And thank you for having me here. It's been a very inspiring few days and meeting lots of great young startups who I hope we can learn more about and consider for our prize. So I am the nominations manager for the Food Planet Prize. The Food Planet Prize is the main activity of the Kurt Bergforsch Foundation, which was established in 2019 to drive a rapid transition to a sustainable global food system. As nominations manager, I am responsible for overseeing the evaluation of the initiatives we are considering for the prize. And we don't specifically focus on youth-led initiatives or startups, but we really do try to consider a huge range of any type of organization, any type of initiative making a positive impact on the food system. So I'll give two quick examples. The first one is how we have been trying to support youth-led initiatives. One of our finalists in 2024 was a youth-led initiative called No Feed, and they are a Tanzanian-based startup that turns organic waste into high-quality fish feed and fertilizer. And they didn't end up winning the prize that year, but we were able to provide them access to our jury, our global community. We were able to give them some visibility, and also recently we were able to facilitate their participation in a startup program that was featured at the Eat Stockholm Forum earlier this month, where the founder and CEO of No Feed was able to speak about her work to a broader, more global audience. And then an example of how we've been contributing to a sustainable agri-food transformation. We do keep up with our former winners, and we like to see what they've achieved since winning the prize. One of our winners is a Nigerian initiative called Cold Hubs that is developing a solar-powered cold storage chain to prevent post-harvest food loss. And we've been very happy to see that since they won the prize a few years ago, they've now scaled up throughout the entire country, and they're starting to expand into additional countries and provide additional services to help farmers get their produce to consumers without being spoiled or damaged, which reduces food loss and waste, improves farmer livelihoods, improves food safety, and also produces green jobs.
Great, thanks very much. I didn't really realize that we designed the panel seating in this sort of one side, other side, but it sort of has turned out that way. No, I think we can stay, but I did realize just here in this moment that we have sort of two of the evaluators, partners, investors, and here two entrepreneurs that are very familiar to this entire World Food Forum and to FAO and our work as well. I want to turn next to Kunihiro. We met a few years ago, in fact, on what was more of a traditional mission trip for me to Tokyo to meet with a number of government leaders. And somehow I stumbled upon this gentleman, and he's been back here in the building with some of his colleagues, young, organized, Tokyo-based Japan startups, and we're thrilled to have you back. So please, a little bit of a self-introduction and some of your thoughts.
Well, thank you so much for having us and this opportunity. My name is Kuni Shimoji. We are EF Polymer. EF Polymer, EF stands for eco-friendly. As a EF Polymer, we upcycle crop residue such as orange peels, and we extract pectin to produce the 100% natural and biodegradable superabsorbent polymer. We're the only polymer producer with the organic certificate as of today. And as you guys all know, water scarcity, drought is causing huge issues throughout the world and decreasing a lot of yield and the income for the farmers. So our mission is to support the farmers who are facing severe water scarcity to overcome or minimize those impacts so that we can support them to achieve sustainable agriculture, not only economically, but environmentally. So a couple examples. Well, as a matter of fact, our CEO is from India, who invented this polymer. But before joining, I was actually working at a university called Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. I was working under the president to help him transform the technology, put that technology into the society. And then the CEO is actually, when he came to Japan, he was around 20 years old. And we kind of tag team, and then now we have, two CXO, from Japan and two CXO from India. We combined, and then we started from the seed round, and then now we recently achieved a Series B fundraising. Now raised around 30 million USD. Starting from 2 members, now we have 80 members in India, and we have 25 members globally. So that initiative itself, our project as EF Polymer is expanding quickly, and then we're on a growth stage, I guess. So that's where we are.
It's great. Congratulations on the success that you've had. It's very inspiring to many of our other entrepreneurs and early stage business leaders who are here, including Maral, you. You reminded me that we first met on this stage, in fact, last year, and you were saying how relaxed you felt this time because a year ago you were one of the pitch contestants, did very well, I remember, and this year you get to be here as a voice of experience. And I'd really love to hear, first to have you share a little bit about Safi with the colleagues who are here in the room, but what's changed for you in the last year and some of your thoughts on this experience as well.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having us here today. You mentioned we were on the stage last year, but actually virtually because we couldn't make it in time to Rome from our graduation ceremony. And so to be on the stage is a huge honor and very exciting to be at this beautiful venue. So a little bit about Safi. At Safi, we have created an off-the-grid pasteurization control unit that essentially allows any smallholder dairy farmer, milk vendor, or honestly anybody to pasteurize their milk without the use of on-the-grid electricity. Our main purpose and vision is to make safe milk accessible to everyone, especially to pregnant women and youth who really do rely on milk for its essential nutrients. And then part of that as well comes in how can we support smallholder farmers as well. We realize that they can actually earn more money from selling pasteurized milk rather than raw milk because of that value addition. And so over the years, we've been able to see just how much that additional income has been able to impact their lives. And then lastly, we are an IoT device, and so we are able to gather a lot of data that can help regulators, governments, and even NGOs across the world get more transparency into the dairy supply chain. Right now, we are working in East Africa, and Rwanda, and Kenya, but we really do hope to scale in all regions that do primarily have an informal dairy supply chain. And then to answer your last question, I mean, the last year since the Startup Innovation Awards has been a whirlwind. We graduated from university, have really had the ability to work on this full time, and the network here has been incredible, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it in the panel.
Fantastic, great. Let me go next into a few maybe more tailored or individualized questions for each of you now that everyone has gotten the opportunity to get to know you a little bit. Ian, I want to come back to you and maybe with all of these types of questions or comments, you're always wearing both hats, which is fine. But maybe this one is a little bit more tied to Mass Challenge. And I guess what I'd really like to sort of understand are some of the lessons that you have learned over the process of putting Mass Challenge together, bringing more partners to the table. How have you worked to help the young entrepreneurs scale? How have you helped them receive feedback? How have you brought new and different types of private sector evaluators, investors to the table? You heard us describe earlier, we're 5 years into this journey, and every time we have a forum like this, we're constantly adapting. And so maybe a little bit of the perspective of how Mass Challenge has seen over its time certain dynamics shift, and maybe how it's even had to adapt to or change some of the ways that it works.
Well, that's an easy question, isn't it? Thank you very much for that. So, I mean, I think there's a few things that are really important to consider. First of all, Mass Challenge was started in the US in 2008, 2009, as a response to the financial crisis, to find entrepreneurs who could build businesses to create jobs and solve global problems. So when we brought it to Switzerland, we took the bits that are translatable and transferable to the context of Europe. So we didn't start from zero. And I think that was very, very important. We built on a credible, well-working program. I think the second thing that's important is, you know, I said we were the worst startup of all the startups, 2016, honestly. We had startups in our cohort who could have taught us how to run a better accelerator. And I mean, I was chairman and I was operationally involved every single day. It was a nightmare. But we learned and we built a fantastic team. I mean, the team that runs it are brilliant.
How many people are on the team? Can you describe
So
that?
we have an MD, and the MD is not your typical startup accelerator MD. This is a guy with 30 years in CPG who fell in love with startups and found the job he was born for a few years after joining us. And then we have, experienced industry PhDs and industry people in food tech, in sustainability and material science, in biotech. And then we have all the staff that run the program behind it. And then we have entrepreneurs in residence. So we have people who have built and sold and exited companies. And they've made every mistake you can imagine, and they've been successful. And they sit with the startups and they say, this is what I experienced, and this is what worked for me. And then we have 300 experts and mentors who volunteer. Now, you know what it's like in your life. You get your first sales contract. That had nothing to do with designing a great technical solution. You've never, ever seen a sales contract. What do? Well, we say, oh, fantastic, you've got a sales contract. We'll get you an experienced commercial person. They'll be here tomorrow morning, and for free, they will design you on a basis of a standard sales contract for you. You move, you make your deal. Every startup who applies, 2,400, gets written feedback from 5 judges. This is why we don't select you, or this is what you have to improve. That feedback loop is essential. And then, if you really help the startups, if you stop them falling in the traps, you can give them 2 years you can give them the first 2 years in 4 months, just by killing the waiting time and having experienced people who've done it before. And that's before you connect them to the money. And that's before you connect them to the corporate partners who know how to do this at massive scale and have, food is capital intensive. You have to build factories. Then you have to be able to run a factory. You have to have the working capital for the raw materials and the semi-finished goods. You want to build a brand? Poof, this gets expensive, right? And so we spend so much time connecting people to people who have done it, or to platforms that they could sit on and benefit from and still keep their companies. And I think this is the learning. Don't do it alone. This is the biggest piece of advice I would ever give. Don't do it alone, and don't imagine you can do everything. I've got a new technology, I've got some new raw materials, I'm building a processing plant, I've got a novel way of distributing, I've got a new brand. Yeah, who are you? You're Cargill, you're Tyson, and you're Nestle. Excellent. So I do hope that you've got the 4 billion R&D spend that will enable you to achieve this. Partner, and pick fabulous partners.
And I think what you also said, as I see the 2 colleagues on my right, being prepared for the hard days. I know in this room we're doing a lot of celebrating, and there's been a lot of moments where we've asked all of you to applaud and give those signs of appreciation and positivity. But I would imagine, we'll come to you here in just a minute, some of the biggest lessons that you've learned have come from the harder days and the days where it doesn't feel like it's going very well. So I took that as well, Ian, from some of your comments. Let's go to Emily next. And you introduced the Food Planet Prize. Maybe, Emily, you could talk a little bit about some of the criteria or the approaches that the prize takes on in thinking about the places, the projects, the people that you work with and support as well, please.
Yes. So I should mention, I don't know if I said this earlier, but we are the world's biggest environmental award, and it's a $2 million prize each year that goes to an initiative from anywhere in the world, any part of the food value chain, just working to make the food system more sustainable.
And a single prize.
A single prize, at the moment at least. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about the criteria that we have, and then talk you through the prize process so you get a better understanding of how we select the initiatives. And I'll also highlight a few more initiatives that have been former winners or finalists, just to illustrate the diversity of things we're looking to support. So we have 2 main criteria that are kind of the guiding principles, and that means that the initiatives have to have a clear link between working on the food system and addressing the environmental sustainability dimension. So of course, we're very interested in initiatives that have other co-benefits, but we are really set up to tackle the sustainability challenges with the environmental focus. And second, we're looking for initiatives that really have the possibility of scaling up and having a real impact if only they were to succeed. We are a little bit different from many other sources of funding for two main reasons that I think might make us particularly interesting for startups and young initiatives. One is that we are an award, not a grant, so there are no strings attached and no reporting requirements, which can often be very cumbersome, especially for small teams. So we really just trust that the winner will use the funds in a good way. And the second thing is that we are really looking to reward potential, not previous success, which sets us apart from a lot of other awards. And this means we can take risks, and we're really looking for something that could succeed with the help of the prize. So we want to make a difference in helping your initiative achieve its potential impact. I'll talk a bit about the process now. We receive around 1,000 nominations a year, so not quite as many as the Youth Innovation Awards had last time, but getting there. And we mainly get our nominations through a simple nominations form on our website. So anyone can submit a nomination for their own work or someone else's work all year round. We don't have any cutoff, it's always on a rolling basis. Once we receive the nominations, we do an initial vetting and compare the initiatives to other similar initiatives working on the same part of the food system sector or in the same geographical region. And we do this just with kind of desk research and publicly available information. And then we look at the initiatives that we feel really could have something compelling, and we contact initiatives and ask them to share more information in their own words about their work, the impact they have achieved, the impact they are aiming to achieve, and their ambitions for scaling. Based on this information, we develop a long list of around 50 initiatives. And then we work on a very hard part of the process, which is turning that into a short list of around 10 initiatives. And at that stage, we do much more thorough assessments. We get external experts to do scientific assessments. We commission due diligence reviews to make sure the initiatives and the people behind them are okay. And we also send journalists and photographers to visit these shortlisted initiatives so that we can really capture their story and understand their context. And after we've done all of that, the Food Planet Prize Secretariat sends the shortlisted initiatives and their materials to our international jury, which is made up of a mix between scientific experts and food system practitioners. So we really want kind of a diversity of views to be represented in the jury. And the jury will have some discussions to really understand the initiatives, and then we bring the finalists and the jury to Stockholm, where we are based, every June. And the initiatives get a chance to present to the jury in person, and the jury ultimately votes on a winner. So that's our process, and I'll just mention a few more winners and finalists so you can understand some of the initiatives we have supported. I talked about No Feet and Cold Hubs earlier. We had another youth-led initiative as a finalist in 2025 called Semion. They're based in Argentina, and they're working on harnessing plants' own defense mechanisms to protect crops against pests. A former winner was C40 Food Systems, very different type of approach, global network of cities working to make urban food systems more sustainable. Another former winner is the Land Institute, which is developing and promoting perennial crops to help make agricultural systems more environmentally friendly. And we have other finalists and winners addressing things like dietary shifts, circular use of resources, producing zero-emission fertilizer, other technical and social and nature-based solutions. So we're really interested in a huge range of projects to support. So it is just one monetary prize per year, but even for the initiatives that don't end up winning, we believe that we are able to provide support in the form of visibility, also connecting them to a network. We really try to facilitate connections and collaborations and partnerships. And at our in-person event in Sweden each year, it's been very rewarding to see that many of the finalists find ways to cooperate and support each other, even though they come from very different parts of the food sector or different parts of the world.
Yeah, that's great. And then even just you as the prize, you're providing, I think, visibility and education around the issues of sustainability themselves. And so I think that's another really important contribution to all of this. I'm going to turn back to Kunihiro, and you described a bit of the, I think, very impressive trajectory that EF Polymer has been on very recently, even in a fairly short period of time. But to my earlier comment about some of the challenges that you face, could you give us a little bit of that personal experience of maybe some of the up and the down days from a very real perspective?
Thank you. We were talking earlier, a lot of people tell startups like, oh, learn from other startups, don't make the same mistake. Actually, we are all gonna make the same mistake, to be frank, because people don't really learn until you experience it. That's the frank answer. So as a matter of fact, we actually experience a lot of downsides too. You know, sometimes, you know, leaders don't agree on a lot of decisions but one of the challenge I had was when we are trying to expand into the United States for like distributorship, we decided to rely heavily on one company, almost giving them an exclusivity. That's a no-no from your perspective, but we did that anyway. And we failed miserably. But that was okay. From that experience, we decided, you know, state-to-state basis strategy, how we try to approach, like for example, of California, we decided to, you know, work with, you know, third party, like such as UC Davis, also private sector R&D team to actually generate the data, because as a agricultural material startup, what you need is data generation and also accumulation of those like goods and bads, and then kind of give them farmers the honest feedback about how we best use our polymer to best perform, to minimize the issues of the water scarcity and so on. So we kind of replicate that model to, you know, other regions. But to actually come to this far, a lot of people have supported us. For example, in Japan, we're getting a lot of support from private sector, including JA, Japan Agricultural Cooperative, program called AgVenture Lab. And then we're getting a lot of not only the exposure in Japan, to get connected to the influential farmer, because when it comes to the agricultural sector, word of mouth nothing can beat the word of mouth. So we need to get connected to the actual influencer in the agricultural sector. So once we did that, we started to be more successful in the Japan market. Then this program held by the AgriVenture Lab actually got us connected to the Crédit Agricole, for example, to enter into the French market. And we are the only Japanese startup getting support from the Crédit Agricole's network to get connected to another influential farmers in the region. Also, that opened up some door in Italy and so on. So that failure in the United States to almost give them a lot of like, you know, right to sell a product ended up selling nothing. And then we kind of made a comeback in another area to actually learn from that lesson to generate more sales in that sense. And also we learned that hard way that we need a local member to get into the deeper network of agricultural sector. Because if I come here just alone, it's not the racial thing. It's just a cultural and also understanding of the nitty-gritty needs and the reality of the agriculture. You need a local member to speak their language. So that's the hard way we learned.
Ian, you looked like you were ready to ask a follow-up question.
No, I was interested. I thought the exclusivity comment was interesting because it's one of the big no-nos.
You know, they told me no, but we went anyway, and then we failed miserably. So and, that's good.
But sometimes it works. Exactly. That's the problem, isn't it?
Exactly.
So the hope is really high, but the reality is down here. Yeah.
Always a gamble and always a risk associated with whichever path we take. Ral, I want to turn to you. And you mentioned in your introduction a little bit about the year that you've had. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that and talk about where and how you see private sector partners being an important connection point for you. But I don't think we prepared you for this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I really want to hear from you very specifically how do you see your role as a woman business leader in this current dynamic and environment, whether it's some challenges that you face or maybe some unique opportunities that are presented to you? But I'd really love to hear a little bit about that perspective as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So to start off, I guess, with your initial question regarding the year we've had and how private sector has supported us and can support us further. When we were here on the stage last year, we had done a couple of prototypes and pilots, very small scale, 10 to 15 devices in Rwanda and Kenya where we work, and we really did need some capital to start doing some bigger pilot programs and validate our work on a global stage. The funding that we got from here, from Seeding the Future, who you heard from as well in the previous session, really did accelerate that for us. We just completed a pilot with hundreds of devices in Rwanda and Kenya, which is very exciting. And a lot of test beds that we have planned coming up actually come from the FAO and UN. How can we work with private partners who have existing networks and work within and see how our product can fit in the dairy supply chain? Just before this session, I was talking to someone from Tetra Pak who was saying, oh, we work in Rwanda with cooperatives, we're building them up. Let's experiment together a little risk-free and see, is there an opportunity for us to collaborate? I think that's also very important now more than ever. We're seeing a lot of funding challenges, especially for more traditional development programs. And I think that brings an opportunity for the private sector to come in, not only to fill that funding gap, but to really empower startups to create more sustainable business models so that we aren't reliant on grants and external funding. Safi was a nonprofit a few years ago. We transitioned to a for-profit status around 2 years ago, and that was solely because we realized if we really want to make the impact that we know we can and we need a business model that can scale up and impact as many people as possible. So that's number one. And then also I've been noticing, in the past months, especially with AI, people can create startups in months, sometimes even weeks. And so there's a lot of incredible ideas out there, but I think especially where youth kind of struggle is we haven't spent a lot of time in the private sector or industry because we are young, and so we don't have that network or supply chain connections to actually distribute our products. And so to have private sector partners is really valuable. And I'm looking at you, Ian, because we were actually accepted into Mass Challenge in 2023, and the most exciting avenue for us was potentially working with someone like Nestle or Danone, to all these experts to actually distribute our products. So what you're saying is exactly what I think startups need.
Applications open in January.
Yes, we'll reapply. It feels like a full circle moment being on the stage with you again.
And the other question about a strong woman leader in this space, talk a little bit about that dynamic for you.
I don't know if I'm an expert there. I feel very blessed to be a female founder and to have so much support from all of these different private sector partners. I think there is a lot of support for female founders these days. I think when I look at myself, I do try to support other women if I can in the future. Not that we're doing a lot right now, but even for Safi, we try to help as many women, smallholder farmers, and give them our device so that they can start their own businesses and almost become female founders themselves. And so I think as women, we have the responsibility to help each other and bring each other up. And so I hope to do more of that as the years come.
Great, very good. All right, let me offer a last question to each of you, and I'm going to move a little bit away from probably the tech entrepreneurial space and kind of come in a little bit more on youth specifically, and youth and young people and this next generation in the space of food and agriculture. Here at FAO, we end up in a lot of conversations with countries developed and developing, global north, global south. It doesn't really matter what size, what sophistication, what geographic placement, but there is this constant, I think, concern about the opportunities, the ways with which we try to attract young people, young talent to the food and agricultural economy network community. And sometimes that's focused exclusively on production agriculture, meaning a lot of places getting very concerned that with growing ages of farmer populations, where's the next generation to actually produce the food. I would argue it's far more than just production agriculture. And in fact, in many parts of the food and agriculture system, there are huge opportunities for young people to find new and different places to position themselves. And so, again, it's a little bit more than the topic we've talked about here, but I think each of you brings such an interesting perspective about how and where you personally, through your role, see the places that we can encourage young people to be a part of agri-food systems or food and agriculture, whichever terminology or vocabulary you want to use. But I think that's a very important part of this week and this particular day for us at FAO, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So Emily, if I might go to you first.
Sure. That's a really good question and something that I thought a little bit about. And I think from the Food Planet Prize perspective, or from my perspective in my role at the Food Planet Prize, I feel like there are maybe three main things. One thing that we and I can do is keep up to date with the latest food systems science and just the global food systems community to help us really be aware of the greatest needs and gaps that need to be filled. And that's where the real opportunities for innovation lie, and those are the types of initiatives that we will keep an eye out for. So for example, the recent launch of the Eat Lancet 2.0 report, that's a good thing to read up on, and just also being part of events like this can understand, and it's a good report, so a good place to just understand where the needs are and try to support those needs. A second thing is, as a foundation, it's very helpful for us to interact with other funders and impact accelerators and just be able to exchange ideas and exchange initiatives. And that helps us find ways to support each other, or if a great young initiative pops up, we'll be able to maybe connect them with someone who can help them, even if we can't. And the third thing is to please nominate for the prize. We really would love more youth and young initiatives to submit nominations. It helps us learn who you are. It helps us find ways to help you. And even if an initiative isn't quite right for our prize in a given year, it helps us learn more about the space and maybe find ways to support you in the future.
Very good. Ian, over to you.
I think people don't understand how important food is. I think people don't understand the role and the purpose that you can drive. I mean, we're trying to feed the planet. We're trying to feed the planet when we've already broken 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, right? So let's be a little bit realistic here. This is a fantastic mission to engage on. This has incredible purpose. Now, we owe it to the people who work in that area to make sure they have the best tools, that they have the modern capabilities, that the education is available everywhere globally to help them engage on feeding the planet and making a good livelihood out of doing it. And we have to make sure that the first thing we look at is the economic prospects of the individuals that go into agriculture and work in food production. If we get those economic prospects to be attractive enough, and the mission is important enough, you will attract young talent. We have to tell them, I mean, it's a tough call, but the first people who are going to be replaced by AI agents are software programmers. All right? So the things that are seen as sexy and super and exciting today, and I can do the job from the beach wherever I want in the world, well, that's not food processing, but they are quite easy to replace. All right? So we need to get people on the core mission, making good things, doing good things, but earning a fantastic livelihood out of it.
I think that's a really important point, and something that I think, maybe a bit historically or traditionally, whether it's inside, the multilateral system, or some of us are parts of, nationally driven government-style organizations, we've been sometimes a bit hesitant to talk about productivity and profitability of farmers around the world. And as I've said in so many places where I get a chance to speak, and where I've had a chance to visit farmers, whether it's Somalia, it's Uganda, it's where I come from, the Midwest of the United States, where our family still farms. It's in some of the most complicated, difficult places where farmers and people tied to food and agriculture are in some cases the most vulnerable, there still is a desire to earn a living and to be profitable. And so I think you're exactly spot on from that perspective of needing that to be a part of our message. Kunioro, over to you.
I think as a startup, I think we just gotta grow, and then let the youth learn from our experience. I think that's one thing, because up until like Series A or so, we can speak a lot of dreams and then vision. I mean, we're still talking about a lot of visions, but now we need to show our product can actually make money in a good way to support the future. Also, now we're in the stage that we need to collaborate closely with the stakeholders, including larger corporate, in a sense assuring them we're not trying to take your business, we're the collaborator with you to generate sustainable future, not a threat for you. So that type of a transaction, as starting from zero, seed round, Series A, that kind of shift of how our external stakeholder sees us as a little shifted, and then it's an interesting experience. So what we can do as a startup is like we grow, we do what we promise, and then sell. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
That's great. Very good. Morale, over to you.
Yeah, your question's interesting because it made me think about why I got into the food space and to be an entrepreneur here, and it happens very unintentionally. Sophie began around 4 years ago. We were all sat at home during COVID, and my co-founder and I, we were sitting and doing a lot of these business case competitions, some by Google, HP, where they'd come to you, ask you to solve a problem, and you'd actually get some prize money if you came first. And so we were getting really hungry for all this prize money, and in the process, we came by a competition that was hosted by the UN and FAO. How can we help smallholder farmers impacted by climate change in the global south? And so again, we thought, you know what, let's do another competition. We have nothing much else to do. And so we applied. We ended up winning that competition. And it's only when we started learning more about the dairy supply chain, we realized, wow, this is extremely intriguing. This is incredible. And we became so passionate about it. Neither of us have a background in microbiology or food science, where we studied computer science and business. And so we had no idea just what an incredibly interesting space this was until we came across a competition. So all this to say, almost meet youth and university students where they're at. A lot of us want to do a startup, we just don't know where to start. And so by showing them the interesting problems they can solve, I think you'll attract a lot of youth.
I have one follow-up question, though, for you before we start to wrap up, which is, you mentioned sort of this competition chase. And I've met a number of entrepreneurs who begin that process of simply chasing competitions almost. And I wonder, how you fit into your normal 24 hours in a day. How do you balance the need to be visible and participate in events like this versus the time that you need to actually devote to being the CEO, the COO, the CTO, the marketing director, the public relations director? How do you find that balance? Maybe there really isn't ever a balance, but can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can't tell you that my work-life balance is the best right now. I think we wake up at 7 a.m. and kind of work until 11, 12 at night. But that is because we are so passionate about what we do. I've been told many times over that you will burn out one day, and I'm sure that will happen. But as for now, I think when you're passionate about something, solving a problem, you just kind of want to work on it all day, every day. Until we were in school, up until a year ago, it was a lot balancing full-time school. My co-founder and I actually did 2 degrees at the same time, and then Sophie as well. And so it was a lot, but now being able to focus on one thing and one thing only has really allowed us to grow in the last year and put our all into it.
It's great. Well, I wish that we had even more time. We have a great keynote speaker to close out our session. But before we move to that, let me ask everybody in the audience to give these 4 experts in their field and really obviously committed participants to this process and to investing in the next generation of leaders in food and agriculture. Please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you. So inspiring. And again, let me just say on behalf of all of us at FAO, these types of conversations are fundamentally important to what we do here in this building and this institution. We work every day with national governments, we work with private sector, we work with civil society, we work with research institutions, and it's really important for us to have these opportunities to hear sometimes the very unique perspectives from different constituencies and different parts of the food and agricultural economy. Because while we work at FAO on a very consensus-driven, which sometimes can add a little bit of heaviness to our process, because you can appreciate that in this world of food and agriculture today, we don't all agree on every part of its trajectory, on its set of priorities, but it's the viewpoints and the opportunities to be in a room together, on a stage together, where we have this kind of sharing and this dialogue that I think is going to help all of us unpack many of these thorny, complicated, really sometimes very overwhelming challenges that are on our doorstep today, not even in the offing. So I really do appreciate what each of you do individually, what you contribute to your work, to the roles and the organizations that you have, but thank you for being a part of the discussion here at FAO as a part of the World Food Forum and a very important week that we're having. So thank you again. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it back over. I think, Oscar, to you. We'll let the panelists come back into their seats and we'll finish the program. Thank you.
Could we please give our panelists another round of applause? Thank you to all of them for what was an absolutely insightful discussion. For me, what really stands out is the power of collaboration across generations. When private sector leaders bring their resources, networks, and experience together with the creativity and drive of young innovators, we open the door to real transformation in agri-food systems. Whether through partnerships, financing, or new technologies, the private sector has a vital role in helping youth-led solutions move from promising ideas to scalable impact, and that's how we can achieve lasting systemic change. Now, I have the pleasure to pass on to our next speaker, who will give some of his perspectives on working with young entrepreneurs and the vital organization that supports them. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Pablo Santofimia, CEO of Bridge for Billions, for a keynote speech. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Pablo Santofimia, co-founder and CEO of Bridge for Billions. I'm originally from Spain, and whenever I have to talk about entrepreneurs, I always say that behind every enterprise, there is a human. And I like to start, telling you about Bridge for Billions from my own personal story. So I was born 36 years ago in Madrid, in Spain, in a very low-income family. My childhood was a bit difficult, not a very stable family, but I was a very good student. With that, I got my first scholarship when I was 16. My father passed away when I was 13. And I went to the US to study at an international high school, 200 students from 100 nationalities. And very, very soon from that date, I understood that really talent is everywhere, but access to opportunity is really what makes the difference. So back then, I thought, okay, so there is a way to make a better world. As a millennial, I really believed that we were going to be better off. So I decided that maybe it wasn't going to be through the international development career that I was going to evolve. After high school, I went to India as a European, working for an NGO, an education NGO. I was really the last one to really support, and I really understood many of the dark sides of poverty, the poverty industry. So I was like, this is really not what I want to do. I started having like a love-hate relationship with the world of development. I dreamed back, of working for the UN, for the World Bank, but I decided that maybe this is not going to be my path. I studied engineering. I studied mechanical engineering in Chinese, worked in China, but as I had a love-hate relationship with development, I said, if I really want to focus on the biggest problem of all, which is poverty, I really need to work in this sector. So went to the US with another scholarship, my last scholarship to Carnegie Mellon. And there really was where I put all the parts of my life together. And I started to discover the concept of social entrepreneurship. People that are in love with problems that they fully understand, and they understand the solutions. But when I started looking at these people, what I saw was that as an engineer, as a mechanical engineer, I was not going to provide all the technology that they could need, because they had a market that really needed to dive in and to progress. The reality was that these people really needed support. So as a mechanical engineer, I decided to look at this system, and I started to see that the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs was really at the early stages. So you might start thinking about the first steps. You might think of it as a journey along where we always see the mountain, the peak of the mountain, the dream. Here I think we saw many people that are seeing that dream. The reality gets really tough when you're really in the very early stages, when you need mentorship and no one supports you. When I started looking at the system, I started to see that there were entrepreneurship support organizations, incubators, accelerators. I had the chance to meet one of the founders of Mass Challenge, an accelerator. So when I was in Boston, and I started to see that these methodologies that actually are helpful for entrepreneurs could be scaled. However, the reality is that most entrepreneurs in the world didn't have access. This was 2013. I was a graduate student at Carnegie Mellon, very inspired by Duolingo, who actually graduated from the same university. And I decided, okay, I'm going to create a platform similar to Duolingo, but to help entrepreneurs build their own business plan step by step, using learn by doing methodology, where they could build the business plan while they were learning, accompanied by 1 or 2 mentors in a program that lasted between 4 and 6 months. So I built this platform. We actually started, like many of the entrepreneurs here in the room, with actually none of the resources. And long story short, I will say, because I really want to focus on the journey, moving forward. What happened from there was we actually conform ourselves as an ESO, as an entrepreneurship support organization. We started building programs. We started initially in Spain, which is where I'm from, but we started building programs in the US, Southern Europe, very soon in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Today, we are a team of 60 professionals in 3 continents We've built more than 360 programs for 6,500 founders who have actually generated 15,000 jobs, have fundraised more than $200 million in seed capital, and generated 160 million in revenue within the first 2 years. So this is real, and this is the power of entrepreneurship. So all of this happened, throughout these last 10 years. Actually, this year in August, we turned 10 years as a medium enterprise. And as Meral was mentioning earlier, burnout is something that happens to many founders. So in 2019, I had a burnout, having pushed myself too hard to really build Bridge for Billions. But I had proven one thing, which was we can train entrepreneurs in a more scalable way. We have a solution that can really support founders to have the right training, the right tools to get to speak to an investor through a step-by-step process where at the end of the process, with the platform, with the mentor, they're able to download a PDF, their executive summary, that then they can use to apply for competitions like Mass Challenge and many other supports like the award. But all of this really brought me one question, especially during COVID. We can keep growing as an organization, as an ESO, but the entrepreneurship ecosystems around the world, they're still supporting one entrepreneur at a time. And with the challenges ahead, we don't have time to really be supporting entrepreneurs in cohorts of 10, in cohorts of 20. We need to go a lot faster. So then in 2020, I started to think, like, how can we scale? How can we become, better? How can we, really take what we've had, the technology, the methodology, and share it with many other organizations? One of the things that I started to look at, it's at a very comparable system, the education system. So I'm gonna make all of you to think of the beginning of 1900s. Education that today we all recognize as a public good. We all understand, kindergarten, primary school, secondary schools, universities. Not everyone needs to go to university, but we know, we've recognized as a society that education is a public good. And we've seen the benefits of that. And no one questions that we are funding schools. Well, 80 years ago, if you came from a rural area and you said, I want to become a doctor, they will say, you don't have the fabric for that. You are not someone from the city, or you are not, whatever it is. This is what happens today with entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs that make it are like the gifted kids back in the day that they were able to make it alone. We know how hard it is to be an entrepreneur. Burnout doesn't happen just because we really want to have burnout. It's because it's extremely difficult. Back in the day, if we wanted to really develop the systems that we have today for educators, basically we had to create an entire ecosystem. So how, with this question in mind, how did we start to challenge the status quo? So by looking at the education system, we got inspired by one of the greatest innovators in the world of education, which was Maria Montessori, someone who believed that education needed to be recognized as a public good, and who understood that instead of building all the schools herself, she was going to bring her methodology within other schools, train educators to become better schools, and then generate a community of educators around it so that you really could create a movement. And that's what we've done with Bridge for Billions and our program Conecta. We are connecting organizations, entrepreneurship support organizations, incubators, and instead of just incubating entrepreneurs only with our methodology, we're starting to incubate incubators so that we can really create a stronger entrepreneurship support ecosystem. Today, in all sectors, the situation is very, very tough. But as we mentioned earlier, the agri-food system, the urgency to generate innovation and solve the problems for all is crucial. However, the entrepreneurship support system that we have to support agri-food system entrepreneurs is nowhere near where we really need for these founders to be able to thrive, to be able to not get a burnout, and for corporates to really get the fair share of innovation and market support that innovators can generate for the bigger corporates. The reality is that today we've supported 6,500 founders. In the last year, we are already at a 1,500 founder rate. So we are growing as a support network, members of Andy. But the reality and the key challenge is, do we really recognize as an institution, as an ecosystem, what really the role of ESOs is? The MIT uses this method to analyze ecosystems that they always use. It looks like a star that has 5 angles. It's the entrepreneurs, the investors, academia, governments, and corporates. But if you look at that system, there is a key actor that is missing, which is the one that connects all of them together, and that's the ESO, that's the School of Entrepreneurs. So with this narrative and this part in mind, we are looking to expand this network of schools in many of the countries that we today operate. And one of the things that I'm really happy to announce, which is one of the potential future partnerships that we will have with FAO, with the Youth Food Labs in Kenya, to really generate another of these schools that supports early stage entrepreneurs in the agri-food system, to be launched next year, if I touch wood, as we say in my country. But the reality and the key challenge, and I know there are entrepreneurs, there are people from the philanthropy sector, from the corporate sector, and from the government sectors, is that the same way that 80 years ago, we couldn't imagine that today education was not only a public good, but was a right. We really need to imagine what can we do as a society if the journey of becoming an entrepreneur and launching your business could be recognized as a public good. How many innovations, how many solutions could we create? Well, we could create that bridge to solve the problems for the billions. And that's my own personal dream, and if anyone wants to follow, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pablo, for your insights into how your organization is enhancing access to support for young entrepreneurs. And finally, to bring this session to a close, we'd like to welcome one final time DDG Beth Bechtel for some final remarks.
This will be very brief because I feel like I've already closed our session a little bit earlier. I would just say thank you, Pablo, for your very personal story and for, I think, the important call to social considerations and social inclusion that you've shared. I like that challenge of thinking about a number of these opportunities as public goods and what that takes for all of us to kind of rethink old models, old habits, old institutions. I think we get very caught in old ways of working and other habits and things that can oftentimes in our own organizations become just sort of entrenched and ingrained. And I think your closing comments, for me at least, to close this whole session, we have to stay adaptive. We have to stay flexible. We have to stay agile in this changing landscape that we find ourselves in. Maybe one final reflection for all of you that also for me personally here in FAO ties very many of these things together is that one of the roles that I have here is to oversee resource mobilization for FAO itself. So in many ways, it's interesting that some of you who are looking for funding, I kind of can relate to that in some ways. It's on a different scale, it's with a different set of programming and activities, but this moment that we find ourselves in today, politically, from a policy perspective, the geopolitics of the world, we can probably go find a corner of this building to have some personal reflections and share opinions on any part of that changing landscape. Maybe we, again, save that for another time. But for this audience, for me, for FAO, for us as an organization, old ways of doing business, old approaches to how we support farmers, how we support countries are going through very almost existential types of change. We have a lot of skepticism today in a lot of places around the world about the value of the UN system, about multilateralism, about old ways of working. I fundamentally disagree with many of those, but what I can relate to is that there is a recognition in so many places today that we just have to work differently together. And we can't stay in our same fragmented, siloed areas. We have to show impact of what we do in a different way. Old metrics that maybe for an organization like ours were about how many workshops did you have? How many farmers did you train? How many tons of seed did you distribute? Doesn't get us to the kinds of real, tangible, change-oriented impact that I think the world is expecting from us. And so I think this conversation today reinforced many of those real realities, you might say. And we are all in this together still, and that's one of the takeaways for me, is that all of you here who presented, all of you who are here in the room and online, we are all working towards so many of the same shared goals and priorities. And so let's take maybe this moment in time as maybe an opportunity to reset, to reevaluate, and to recommit ourselves together, all of us as partners and stakeholders, to really try to transform agri-food systems in the best way possible. So thank you again for the opportunity to come up on stage one more time. Thank you for being a part of all of the things that we do together. Oscar, do I turn it back over to you for a final close? Okay, back over to Oscar to say goodbyes. Thank you.
Thank you again to the Deputy Director General for joining us and for your insightful remarks. Now, we have a couple of last thank yous. First off, thank you very much to the fantastic Youth Innovation Team and the volunteers of the World Food Forum, who, without them, this session and this whole forum would not be possible. And thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. Now, a few last things. First, we're asking if you could please scan the QR code that I have behind me and give us some feedback on the session. It'll only take a couple minutes, and the insight you'd give us would be incredibly helpful. As well, we'd like to invite you to join the current hand-in-hand session happening in the green room that should be starting shortly to continue the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and see you at the World Food Forum Private Sector Session in 2026. Thank you.
We need a world with a healthy diet for all. And no more food loss and less waste. When you keep done search, you'll find a life. If we can put ourselves to the side.